We're inside.
We were never really gone, but we're back. We have our fresh cups of coffee. As I'm sure you,
Fresh pack.
I'm sure you saw that whole process. I'm sure you enjoyed it.
It's a new implementation we're doing here at Swir Media.
Yeah, it's just something that.
Starting to take B-roll.
Yeah, we're starting to up our production. You probably also noticed something huge. If you follow us with the first 9 episodes, we are no longer in the garage, or the garage, as they say in some parts of the country. We are now indoors. And it feels good. Honestly, feels good. It's a more controlled environment. As you can tell, we actually have, somewhat of a set. It's nice. We are going to kick off episode 10 by first and foremost introducing ourselves again. I am Giorgio. And here's my lovely co-host, Marco. We're both quite illustrious, as you can tell. And we figured, we started off with, a little bit of housekeeping. Figure we update you on where we're at with some of the new changes we've made here at Swir Media. So, did you want me to do that? Or
I can do the Twitch streams. We're streaming now Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Every day. Well, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Not every day. But yeah. Lord knows it's a little bit more than we can handle right now. But yeah, we're streaming Monday, Wednesday, and Friday now. As opposed to, I think we're doing Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's changed, and there's no late night stream anymore. We're just doing 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
We've honed our schedule.
Yeah. So that's pretty tight. We're back with that.
Yeah,
and the new podcast upload date is Friday. We're doing Friday?
Yeah, that was my understanding. Oh no, we're publishing today.
We're publishing today.
Oh, we're publishing. Hey, listen.
That's where I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Thursday.
That is true.
Thursday, new day. You can choose to watch it on your Friday, on your weekend, with your kids, with your mother. You can watch it with whoever you want. You can listen to it with whoever you want as well.
Yeah.
But it's going up on Thursday. Dude, I'm feeling the coffee already, dude. It's been a little while away, I realize.
Yeah, that's what I've been sipping at. So that way, we could make you apprised of the reasons why we make these changes. And we just found that Tuesday and Thursday, those are the 2 primary streams that we're doing. And Monday was one that we're kind of doing intermittently. You got to have a consistent schedule. It feels better for us. Feels better for our viewers. The few of you out there, you know who you are. But also, it's just it just makes more sense to have it scheduled throughout the week. So that's why we did that, and we're going to be streaming not just multiplayer games like we were doing before. We're doing like Fortnite and Apex and the Valorants. We're also going to be streaming some single-player games too. So right now we're working through Wind Waker. It's the first time he's played it, and why don't you tell him a little about your thoughts? With the Wind Waker.
I think every Zelda is a great game. Yes. Though I do think Wind Waker is my least favorite. Hearing about the development and how they had to really push themselves with the ocean, it's very clear why there are the problems that I have with it. Such as reusing of certain dungeons and such and such.
Certain fortresses?
Yeah, certain fortresses. Fortress was fine going through the first time. Yeah. I don't mind that. You learn it, you get past it.
Pretty titular.
But you make me go a second time? Oh...
Yeah,
so I don't like that.
It's like, if it's such a forsaken fortress, why am I going back?
No, but in general, I don't know. There's just something. I think I need to think about it a little more to get specific. But there's something about it that I'm I just don't enjoy it really as much as the other ones. Granted, again, I still enjoy it. It's not to say I don't. It's just in comparison to other Zelda games, it doesn't have that same thing that the other ones have. Yeah. I'm kind of nitpicking though, to be honest, and I can be that way.
Well, I don't quite disagree with you.
Yeah, it's a good game. It's just compared to the other ones and stuff. I think the other ones are a lot more of an adventure, so to speak, and not even an adventure. Again, I think I just need to sit on it and think more specifically because.
No, you need to finish it still.
I need to finish it.
You need to finish that.
And then I need to sit on it.
Yeah, finish it. Sit on it.
I need to get more specific with it. There's something I'm feeling where I'm I just don't enjoy it. I don't know exactly what it is that doesn't make me enjoy it as much, but Like, I think it's partly the reusing of dungeons, and I think partly it is also just the whole ocean. I just don't think it's that fun to, like, go around the ocean. It's just kind of tedious, and it's just kind of annoying. It's all right now because you got the like cyclone like teleportation thing, so that cut a lot of it out. But
It's a solid song.
yeah, that's another one too. Like the songs, I'm sick of doing songs. That was one thing I was telling you last time on stream. I'm like, the songs in this, I'm like, it's cool. I'm like, but it doesn't feel like using the ocarina, obviously, and like the songs aren't as good. Like in Ocarina of Time, the songs are like really good. But in this one, it's just like, I don't know, it doesn't grab me. Again, it's still a great game. It's still fun. I still would recommend people to play it. You know,
It's Zelda.
it's Zelda, but I think it is one of the weaker Zeldas.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And replaying it too, as a kid it was a blast because it was like a new Zelda, and I played it a few times, but I hadn't played it for a little while. And playing it this go around, I realized, yeah, it's unless you have the mindset of like really wanting to explore all the islands and stuff, which they are fun, but it really is that in between of the ocean where you're like, there's some islands where you have to like revisit them because they're like, oh, you know, you got to do this one thing or
like the Korok, he's like, can you get me some water? And I get him water.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, can you look for my other 8 siblings to do this with? And I'm like, no, dude.
And you're like, I don't really want to. You're gonna have me going all over the place, right? And he's like, yeah. You're gonna.
He's like, there's like 32 squares in the whole map.
He's like, take your pick. You know.
It's more than that.
But it is fun if you go into it where you're like, I want to fill out the whole map.
Yeah.
You know, I want to throw my bait around and get the fish to fill out my map. You know, because there's a whole colony of fish that know how to. They're cartographers.
And if you bait for a while,
Yeah.
you might even become a pro baiter.
Yeah.
But if you bait even longer than that, you might just become a master.
Yeah. You become a master
at baiting.
Yeah.
Some would say you become a master baiter.
Shut up, dude. Oh my god. Anyway, Wind Waker, I never knew her. But come join us. You know, we're still working through that. We got a couple more dungeons left. You know, we got about 8 Triforce pieces to find.
That was another one, dude. We're like playing,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, we only have 2 more dungeons. He's like, yeah, and those 8 pieces of Triforce. You need to...
Yeah.
It's like, fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to.
It's a thing, you know, and we're gonna finish that thing on twitch.tv/Swir Media. So come join us on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. Pacific time. But enough of all that. Okay, today we're not gonna have any news because we just came back. You know, we're still dusting ourselves off from that hiatus. You know, there's a lot of things that are going on.
Hiatus.
And we're ready to hit the ground running, but we do have a couple of specially picked topics, things that we thought were very important to go over, you know, in returning in this new year, and also just getting ourselves back up and running now, and
going past the things that we, through the time we were kind of off, we missed also being able to like cover like Callisto and stuff like that.
And we feel like this does really encapsulate a lot of the current state of gaming, which is the thing that we're returning and talking about. That's the thing that we're really speaking to. And so we're going to be talking about remakes and remasters because there's quite a lot of those going on right now. You know, quite a lot of those on the
Prince of Persia.
Well, I mean, that's a little far back.
That's crazy.
Well, I mean, it's Jake Gyllenhaal.
No, because
I would have never thought myself.
No, because they're remaking the original game.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, they announced it a while ago, but they pushed it back again.
Yeah, but we're talking about ones that we've actually played. So we figured we'd start off with what started off the year, the Dead Space remake. In a sentence,
it was really good.
Beautiful game.
Yeah, they
beautiful the way they did
encapsulated what the original was.
We had a couple concerns going in, him more than I, but it was
because I like literally just played through the original like recently.
Yeah, there is a concern of why is this getting made? Yes, it looks very pretty, but why is it getting made? And pretty quickly in playing it, you realize why. Like the things that I felt playing Dead Space when it came out, some odd years ago, it was refined to a level that Because you talk about like the memory you have of like playing something like, oh, that's the way I remember it looking like. But you once you look at it, you're like, oh wow, that's actually a lot older than I remembered.
Yeah.
Like it shows its age and all. So I'll give you a good one. I remember Dead Space being a lot darker, and I'm not talking like in tone or anything. I'm talking like lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it being a lot darker, and it wasn't like watching you play the original.
It's a lot lighter.
I'm like, this is
It's
a
more light.
lot more light in this game than I actually remember there being. I remember it being darker. The remake literally fixes that, and they actually build upon that.
Yeah.
You know, where there's sections that you have to like divert energy, and you can like turn off the lights, and it's actually dark. So stuff like that, beautiful. I loved it. To me, excuse me. It really made things a lot more tense, you know.
Yeah, for me it was like the concerns I had was more than anything like when you get a game like Dead Space and even like a Resident Evil 4, which we're gonna talk about in a sec, because that chainsaw demo's out at this point. We already played it. It's really short, but you know I get why it's so short. You know they show off enough, especially with how soon it's coming out.
Yeah.
But my concern with these remakes is because, like, in my head, I'm like, there's two routes you can go if you're doing a remake. Either take what's there and the concepts and stuff, and then kind of make your own thing, like divert as much as you want, and like turn it into something new, or stay like as faithful as possible as you can. And so my concern with this one was I was hearing that like there's no loading screens, which is fine. I get that. Like, I understand there's not going to be loading screens, but they were talking about how you know the whole ship is interconnected and this and that. And then there was that diverting of power and stuff like that. And for me, I'm like a game like these. I feel like it's particularly with like survival horror games. When you get like a Resident Evil 4 and you try to change anything of that, you kind of ruin the formula of the gameplay. Like the pacing of the gameplay and the gameplay loop is like, whether it's intended or they just they struck oil with how they built it. Like the experience that like a game like Resident Evil 4 or even like Dead Space like gives you, and just like the pacing of the gameplay is like really like to a T, and it like evokes a very specific like feeling, and it's like it gets certain neurons firing off and all this stuff. And so my concern with it was I was seeing that they're trying to do rather faithful, and there's a lot of little things that they were changing where I'm like, okay, I could see how I need to play it, but I could see how that could like ruin the pacing of it. And like to my surprise, you know, playing it, like those things they handled like very tastefully, and like especially having just played the remake or the original, like the remake does have a lot of little quality of life things that or life improvements that do a couple of things. That number one, it does make it more playable for today, because Dead Space original is like pretty freaking old at this point.
Yeah.
So it did update it to make it more playable for today, make it feel more digestible, so to speak. But it also did fix like a couple of the problems that the original had. I think the biggest one I could point at is like the weapons, like and you don't really have to even in this remake, but especially in the original, there's like nothing really, in my opinion, there was like nothing incentivizing me to use any other weapon. Because I'm like, this plasma cutter's super strong, the line cutter's great, like I don't feel comfortable using I don't want to use these other weapons. And then when you use them, there's like a bit of a learning curve, but like you're kind of doing the same thing with them. And I'm like, this is like all the weapons in the original, like, they're kind of useless.
They're all kind of like jacks of the same trade.
Yeah, you use them if you want, you know, but like you don't need to. And in this one, like you still don't have to use them. Like you can get through the game perfectly fine without it, I would assume. Like I didn't have any moments where I was like, oh, I need this gun on hand. It was just now they were more useful for particular things. Like the flamethrower was really useful if you had a bunch of crowd around. Like you could, and they have those new augments too, like those like secondary fires, which are like really useful. They like expanded them and changed them a lot more. And so it made the whole arsenal a lot more like useful, but also enticing to use. I felt like a reason to use it. I felt like I wanted to. And not to mention like the sound effects for some of these guns is like nuts.
Oh, yeah.
Like I forget what it was called, but there's that one gun that shoots like a little ball of light and it like sucks in everything near. I think it was like the gravity
yeah.
something. Or
Yeah, I
whatever.
forget what was that called.
But that
yeah, I know what
gun,
you're talking about.
like, you throw that on the floor, and especially with the whole, like, flesh mechanic now, like, dude, it literally, like, rips all the necromorphs, like, skin off. And now you've got literally, like, this, like, skeleton just, like, walking towards you.
So, like, that's another one is to the whole, like, remembering things. Like, the models were, I mean, this game came out, like, 2009, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the game...
I think it was 8.
Or 2, it's even more so. So, like,
It's, like, same difference.
The game before had graphics from that era, and granted, they were great for that era, but they really ratcheted it up. Like, playing this and seeing parts of the necromorph like actually breaking off in the fidelity that it is, bless you,
Thank you.
in the fidelity that it is nowadays, it was honestly pretty astounding to look at. Like,
Yeah.
to your point of that one gravity like well gun, like you can actually see like all the different layers of the necromorph like being pulled off. Like, there was one time I shot it and there was like several necromorphs around where it got like dragged into, because it's like a gravity like well, right? And so it's like pulling them towards, and it's yanking all of their skin off, and then you see like the muscle coming off. And there was literally like they were left with like just a skeleton, and like you could tell little tendons,
Yeah, just to keep it moving.
just to keep it moving. And
Yeah.
then I just lit them all on fire,
Yeah.
and they like fell on the floor screaming. And it was pretty nutty to see stuff like that. The other thing that I think was like a huge quality of life improvement that they changed was actually bringing in that zero gravity from Dead Space 2.
Yes.
And that was huge because there are certain sections like the centrifuge, that whole area,
It wasn't like a pain in the ass.
yeah, because before it, for those who don't know, in Dead Space 1, the original, when you're in zero gravity, you almost were like magnetized to whatever surface you're walking on. And so you had to like keep walking, albeit a little bit slower. But in Dead Space 2, in these sections, what they added was the ability to kind of jump off of the section and like rocket around, and like actually control yourself within this zero gravity like 3D space. In the first one, like for instance, if you wanted to get against a wall and like magnetize against like a wall, you would have to aim at it, and then you would jump and like launch straight forward towards it, and then like magnetize to the wall.
Yeah, it was like a whole animation.
Yeah, it was like an
you're-
animation.
like,
Whereas
you aim at where you go, you press Y, and then your guy jumps to where you aimed.
yeah,
And
whereas
then-
now you can actually like, he's got little rockets, and you can control your guy in 3D space, and that
It's
really
more-
makes some of the most tedious sections in the game so much more palatable.
Yeah, granted, different point of view, but it's like Prey. Like Prey. When did that come out? The new one, like 2016, 17, or whatever.
That one, yeah.
It's like that new Prey, like when you're in Zero G, where you can kind of like free move and like tilt your guy and spin around and do all this different. Like you're literally just like floating in Zero Gs and controlling it, and it made it a lot more palatable to get through those parts.
Yeah, and in particular, also there's a certain boss battle.
Yes, which was actually the second point I was going to
Yeah.
get to, of like things that I think made the first game, granted to a very small degree, but made the first game suffer a little bit.
Yeah.
The Leviathan fight. The Leviathan in the first game is just
boy.
like, it's just annoying. Like it's not hard. It's just way too long. Like they didn't follow like the typical like, like Mario, Zelda, like you hit it 3 times and then like it dies. You rack it up on damage and then do that big thing 3 times.
You're basically
Like-
strategically strafing the whole
Yeah,
way
the
through.
whole way, and it's just a pain in the ass. It's not really fun, and again, more than anything, it's just really long. And in this one, you're like floating around in Zero Gs, which made it a lot easier because you can actually like maneuver around some of the stuff coming at you a little bit easier, and then it's actually shorter.
Yeah.
So you get through it like pretty quickly, and it feels not too quick because it's a boss. Like it feels like a normal boss. Because in the original, it was just way too long, dude. It was just way too long. But that was another one they fixed. And honestly, like I think there's still a reason to go play the original. Obviously, like if you want to, but like in terms of remakes, like so far, this one kind of really does get rid of a lot of reason to even play the original because it fixes so
Yeah.
much, and the things it does add are pretty nice. Like the
Yeah.
weapons and all that. And then another one that they added too is like Isaac Clarke, he talks now. He has full on dialogue. And that was one of those other things that I was kind of concerned about because I'm like, again, I can be like really like nitpicky and I can be really like purist at times with like remakes and stuff like that. Because again, for me, I'm like, either you change it completely or you like be as faithful as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And this one was diverting a little bit more than I would like to have seen from like being faithful to it. But again, that was beforehand. I was like, I need to play it to see. Like, I don't want to judge it before I play it. But having played it, like, it worked. It worked with his dialogue and all that. Like, I like the voice actor they got. He kind of sounded like the original voice actor too. Weirdly, I don't know if I don't think it was
Like with the grunts and stuff.
yeah, like the grunts and all that, and even like in 2, like because he talked in 2, like
True,
it did
true.
it did sound like the original voice actor, but I don't know about that. I haven't checked that up. But the point I'm getting at is it fit, and then the dialogue that they gave him, like, it did add to the whole point of the game and the whole feel of it all, where it's like you're literally like, you feel like you're the engineer of this group and they're sending you everywhere because they need to get off of this ship and you're the only guy that like literally knows how to get these things to work. Like there's dialogue where he's like, oh yeah, I read the manual, like, you know, we can go over here, blah, blah, blah. And there's certain plot points that in the original game, like one of the supporting characters would like kind of push you to go do, that now your character, like, you know, Isaac Clarke brings up because it makes sense for him to bring that up, where he's like, oh, you know, if I go to the centrifugal whatever, like I can turn that off and redirect power over here or whatever. And they're like, okay, Isaac, that's a great idea. Like, you go do that, just stay safe and blah, blah, blah. And it makes the whole scenario like play out a little bit more naturally, I would say, but also it made it feel more and more like what it was trying to do and what it did do in the original, where it's like it is kind of playing and taking a lot of inspiration from, like, you know, like those old like sci-fi horror kind of movies, like a Alien or like an Event Horizon, where it's like you're just this, you get to know your crew, like for the movie, like you get to know the crew, and then you know they're all these different little personalities, whatever, and you go in. And granted, it's a smaller cast than like one of those movies, but like it did feel more like that with Isaac being able to talk.
Yeah.
And so I think the point that I'm getting at and that we're getting at is like Dead Space Remake is like a remake done very well.
Yeah.
You know?
And to your points, because I agree with you completely. We've talked about this a lot off camera and off mic, but when it comes to remakes, like either like really get really faithful about it or really diverge. And to that point, I would also add, if you're doing a remake and it's tending to be more on the side of sticking really faithfully to the original, then you start to wonder, like, what are you missing out on by not playing the remake or by not playing the original? And when it comes to Dead Space, like, I don't think that you're really missing out on much if you don't play the original.
Yeah.
Like, I think that if you play the remake only, if you've never played Dead Space, you've never experienced the story, like, go play the remake. Like, you don't concern yourself with thinking that you have to go and play the original as well.
No, you
because
don't.
I think that if you were to play the original and then not play the remake, you would be missing out on something. But if you were to play the remake and not play the original, I don't think you're missing out on anything.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I would agree.
So Dead Space Remake, with regards to that, I mean, I think they did a fantastic job on an already amazing game. Like the stuff they improved upon, the stuff they expanded on, also while not increasing the game length that much. Like, it was about the same, if not a little, maybe just a little, because of some of the side missions, which we didn't tap too deeply into, but they were there. And it added world building, which is cool.
Yeah.
You know, but it just felt like such a tight experience that I find it difficult to not recommend it to someone who would even find themselves remotely interested in this kind of game. Like, if you find yourself thinking like, I kind of like some scary things, or like, that seems a little bit interesting, or this, play it.
Dude, Dead Space
Just play it.
yeah.
If you've never played it, this is your chance to go play it. Like, this, honestly, like, it was a joy to play through, you know? And there weren't any moments where I was like, okay, come on, like, there, like, can this speed up, or this, like, there wasn't any of that. It was just a pure great experience.
Yeah.
You know, so And because we didn't talk about it, comparing this to Callisto Protocol, you can see how this was how Callisto's are, first off, like their first studio game.
Yeah.
I don't think that, although I understand why the comparisons are there, I don't think it's quite fair to Callisto Protocol to compare it. I think Callisto Protocol is its own experience. And
It's pretty different, yeah.
It's pretty different. It's trying to do something different. I think a lot of the similarities kind of start and end at the fact that it's third person and over the shoulder and it's a horror story.
You've got your HUD on your back.
Yeah, but past that, like, I personally think that, like, it's still very much worth playing Callisto. I think that was, like, a great experience as well. I don't want to get too deep into it because our break is coming up. But,
oh, damn.
But I figured we'd kind of throw that in there for those of you who are listening. Like, they're both great experiences. And I think that Callisto Protocol, a lot of that's going to come out of preference, But I personally love that one. I thought that game was great, too.
Also, people saying it's, like, so hard. It's not.
It's not that hard. And from what I've heard, they've made it even easier now.
Yeah, just like, slow down a bit.
Yeah. Just
all
think
you have
about
to
your
do,
button pushes.
all you have to do is hold from side to side to dodge.
Yeah, it's just
I don't know.
alternate.
I don't know why people are having such a hard time with that one.
I think a lot of people thought they had to time the left and right push.
No, you just hold it.
You just hold it.
You just hold it and then alternate. Yeah. Whatever one you started on, alternate, because they're always going to hit you if you, like, dodge the same direction.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think Callisto is. I understand why people rated it lower. I personally would give it probably like an 8.
Yep, I would give it an 8 also. Solid 8.
High 7, solid 8. Like whatever one makes more sense to someone, like Kieran, because we're not really like reviewing it or giving numbers.
Yeah, we're just
we're just kind of
not doing that yet.
We're not doing that yet, but
yet.
Yeah, emphasis on yet. But yeah, I'd give it like a solid like 8 because it was just it felt like a game. Okay, like we'll get into this more on the next when we come back. But I just liked it because it felt like a game. It was pretty fresh. I will say the last boss was kind of like, are you serious, guys? Like just the design of it all. I'm like, come on. And then the other thing I'll say, which again it makes sense because the studio's so small. I can only imagine how much time it took to get these to work the way they did. But there wasn't that many executions. No. And there wasn't that many like different kill screens or kill.
I could have liked. I would have liked to see a lot more death animations.
Yeah, with the way that they showed it off in the trailers and stuff, I was expecting there to be like a lot more death animations where I'm like, oh god, I didn't know you could die that way. And I remember you and I even looked up like all the death animations and we're like, oh, we only missed like one.
Yeah.
Like you play through the game, you're probably going to see all of them. But yeah, I would recommend Callisto. It's just don't compare it to Dead Space because it's like it's got some similarities, but it's more just because it's the same mind that made it. It's very different.
Simple question, quick question. Okay, you've got a person that's not played either one of them. They can only play one, and they're coming to you for a recommendation.
Dead Space.
Yeah.
I would say Dead Space.
I'd say go play Dead Space.
Dead Space. This is the thing because what I was getting at is like Dead Space, the original. I would give it probably like a 9.
Yeah.
High 8, solid 9.
Dude, you gotta pick a number, dude.
I'd give it like an 8.7. I know it's a weird, but I'd give it like an 8. Because I think it's more than 8.5, but I don't think it's really a 9, and it's because of some of the problems that it has that I'd take it away from like a perfect score. The remake, I'd honestly give it a 10. Because the remake fixes those like few little problems where I'm like, that's what I can't say it's a perfect game with those things in my head because like they're just like design flaws.
Yeah, I'd say Dead Space
but the remake
is
perfects those. But yeah, on to the break.
Yeah, enjoy this nice tune we picked out for you specially. Oh, hi, you're back. Welcome back. We're going to continue our conversation regarding remakes and remasters. We're going to talk about a little Nintendo IP that you might have heard of, called Metroid. Metroid Prime. And there's a remaster that was shadow dropped on us. It's pretty awesome. And I've been playing through that, you've been playing through that. I think I got a little further than you did.
Yeah, I played like the day you saw me playing.
Yeah, I'm like towards the end of the game already. if you have not played Metroid Prime Remaster or otherwise, I'll give you a little history of what it is. I'm sure you've seen these 2D Metroid games. This is a 3D one that came out on the Nintendo GameCube back in like the early 2000s. And it was a first-person 3D Metroid where you explored a planet. Zebes. And Zebes. And it's such a blast. It is you alone as a bounty hunter on this world, exploring and scanning things and getting your power-ups. Classic Metroid.
Scanning. Lots of things. Scan everything. Read everything. I swear.
Honestly, do that. It adds to the world building. But you scan things. You find out about enemy weaknesses. You find out about, just lore. It's great. It's a great time. But
it's like weirdly satisfying to just go through too.
Yeah.
It's got like, I don't know. It's like it like weirdly like triggers almost like the ASMR part of my brain with certain things, like the morph ball.
Yeah.
When you go into holes.
I like that part too.
Yeah, that part's really nice.
But what I would say is that, kind of speaking again to keeping on the topic of the remasters and the remakes, this one is like a 1-for-1 like remaster. There's not any big changes. The biggest change is a control scheme. So in the original, you had to control it all with that one analog stick on the GameCube. Now you actually have the option for the default option is like a dual stick, like kind of any other first person game. And let me tell you, that really kicks it up a whole notch. Where you're like,
you actually like get through the game.
It's a perfect game now. Like, because before, like, it was perfect, but the caveat being, just know that control scheme's a little funky. It did not age well. Like, when it first came out, there wasn't a lot of twin stick shooters out at all.
It was tank mechanics.
Yeah, it was straight tank mechanics. Everyone was fine with it. But
I will say, tank mechanics I don't think are like that they're aged poorly. I think tank mechanics just doesn't really work in first person.
No, it doesn't. And that's the thing, is that this, when it came out, because there wasn't like dual stick first person shooters, no one was the wiser. No one was all like, oh, but there's a better way to do this. Everyone was just like, oh yeah, no, this works. This is great. But the second that you started getting these first-person shooters on console and they're doing the dual stick thing, everyone was like, well, Metroid, it doesn't feel that good. If like you hadn't played it, it felt obtuse. And so that was the caveat always, where you're like, okay, play Metroid Prime, fantastic game. Just know that the control scheme's a little funky because it came out a while ago. Now with the remaster, it's perfect. Like walking around and being able to aim and all of that.
That's the thing too with the original. The lock-on mechanic was like a little bit looser.
Yeah,
so if like, certain enemies would jump out of your visor like point of view, and then it would like break lock.
Yeah.
Particularly Ridley.
Yeah.
But that being said, like now it's like solid.
Yeah.
Like even in the originals, they fixed that by 2.
Yeah.
But like now in this one, it's fixed even in the first one, so it's like it's great.
Yeah, and what's cool too is with this remaster, they really went like the extra mile, where they actually, like, you could tell they remodeled a lot of these things. A lot of the assets are.
It looks like they remodeled everything.
Yeah, it's like completely redone. It's retextured. There's like a new lighting system where you've got like ambient lighting and you get your ambient occlusions and all that. Like, it looks so fresh. And like playing it, like this is one of those instances where it looks way better than you remembered, but your brain still kind of makes that jump in your head until you see like a side by side and you're like, wow.
I feel like Dead Space kind of did that too.
Yeah.
There are moments in Dead Space where I'm like, this looks like how I remembered it.
Yeah. And then there was moments in Dead Space where you're like, wow, that's
fresh.
That is beautiful. The sound design in that game, my goodness. But everything else about Metroid Prime is exactly how you remembered it, for those of you that played it. If you have not played that game, honestly, it's $40 on the eShop. You know, I'm really impressed and really thankful that they put it for that price, because knowing Nintendo, they would have slapped the $60 on that and still
it's a
sold
tight
it.
little experience for that price.
It is. I don't think you can go wrong for $40 with that game. Like, quite honestly. And it does beg the question, are they going to remaster 2 and 3 leading up to the new Metroid Prime 4 that's in development?
Yeah.
I think they totally are.
I would say, too, like, who is the game not for? I think if all you play is, like, a Fortnite and all these, like, super high-octane kind of games, this might be, like, way too slow.
It might be, but honestly,
But
I would still say try
still
it.
check it out.
This
Like,
is a
point.
classic.
Yeah, that's
at
kind
this
of
point.
that's kind of the point I'm getting at. Though, is I'm like, even if all you play is like Madden or like sports games, like this game is not like super inaccessible.
No.
And like
totally
again,
not.
like because when I first played it, I was kind of like, I was like trying to rush through it and stuff because I wanted to play through like that and 2 and this and that. Like, so I didn't really scan a lot, but especially this time around on the remaster, making sure I scan like everything and stuff like that, and all that adds like a lot more to like the whole feel and all that. Not to mention the game has like great music.
Oh, the music's so
The music gets stuck in your head. It's the whole thing.
It's the feeling of being alone and discovering this planet for yourself. Like, you really do feel the isolation of being on a planet and there's nothing else there to interact with apart from like the creatures and the areas and, you know, the space pirates. You know, you gotta deal with them. There's areas that like are genuinely like, I think still very foreboding. You know, still and even more so in this remake where you go into some of these areas and you're like, man, this is creepy, dude. Like it's
an alien planet.
It's an alien planet, and there's areas that are unknown and a little treacherous, you know, and some areas that are very treacherous, you know, and some areas that have like these flying worms, you know, that you gotta shoot. But
Are they worms? I thought they were like snakes.
They're worms,
but they got mouths and eyes.
Worms have mouths.
I don't think they have eyes.
I'm pretty sure they do. If you zoom into their little heads.
Do they?
Yeah.
I thought they just follow like vibration and shit.
No, some of them do. There's different kinds of worms.
No, I'm pretty sure like. Okay, let's not get into the worm talk, right?
Listen, we're not microbiologists.
I'm like,
here.
listen, I read Dune.
Yeah,
Actually,
sandworms. The shaykhulud.
the shaykhulud.
Yeah, play this game. Like
It's great.
It is so much fun.
It's a classic, and it is well worth the replay.
And
well worth the play too.
Sense of progression too. You know, I'll leave you with that one. The sense of progression.
Dude, when you get a new like upgrade or something, it's so satisfying. That game.
Yeah, it is. The animations are cool, and just the feeling of being inside of that helmet. It's just it's so much fun. I am speaking from a place of nostalgia as well, as I'm sure our listeners can hear.
This guy was a little tyke when he first played that.
Yeah, but listen, I'll tell you right now, this little tyke was not wrong. He knew, and he
knows.
The
game is great. The game's selling like fucking crazy,
which is good
with this remaster too. So for me, I'm like, I don't know. It just got me thinking. I'm like, dude, like, I think too what we've been talking about more off because we kind of started talking about this more prominently like during the time that we weren't like doing the podcast and stuff because like God of War came out, then Callisto came out, and then everyone's reviews of those came out. And then I forget when Forbidden West, that came out a little while ago at this point, but Forbidden West came out and all these different games have been coming out. And we've been just kind of realizing like the state of gaming right now. And a lot of games are like just trying to be like a movie.
Yeah.
Like
so video gamey.
Yeah, and like the games that do feel like a video game, they have like I need to like do research on the development of some of these games, but like Forbidden West, for instance, is like it's not a bad game. I just don't think it's even close to as good as people are making it seem. I think that game's like a 6 or a 7. Yeah. Someone may say that's being harsh, and I'm like, honestly though, like I wanted to like hear the story, this and that, and like kill some of these robots and get through it, and like yes, that's there. But when I'm like heading to a mission and then I get stopped by 3 other missions and then I open my map and it's like I can hardly see the quest markers from like the actual map. Like it's so much, dude. It's so much going on, and for me I'm like that's fine. All of these things are fine separate, but then it's like, okay, like now I have to do like RPG kind of elements where I'm like swapping gear and trying to upgrade gear and this and that. And then, oh, I have the skill tree now. And then, oh, there's like all these little like jobs you can do. And
Don't
jobs
forget about the crafting.
Yeah, then there's crafting
You gotta collect
too.
the materials.
But then I'm trying to like, and for me, I'm like, I would love that game if all I was doing was like dealing with a skill tree, maybe smaller skill tree, and was like climbing around, and the map was a little smaller.
Why don't
Like
you
it doesn't
make-
need to be so big. And the point I'm getting at is like any one single part of that game is like fine on its own, but this game just, I think it has a problem where it's like it doesn't know what it's trying to. It doesn't know if it's trying to be an RPG. It doesn't know if it's trying to be an action RPG. It doesn't know if it's trying to be like an adventure game. It doesn't know if it's trying to tell like a big. It's like trying to do all of it, kind of.
Yeah.
And it's just not that fun to me. Like especially even like when you're on the, I forget what they're called, the like grapple horn or whatever the hell the freaking thing is. Like the first robot you're like riding on. Mm-hmm. Like even that like riding around the map is. I think if someone says it's not buggy and not kind of like weird with the collision of stuff, I think they're just lying to themselves. Because I'm like, dude, like when I'm walking on straight ground and my freaking little robot mount is trying to jump over nothing like every 2 seconds, okay, like there's a problem with the terrain.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I could go into it more, but I don't want to. That's not the point. Point being is for me, I'm like seeing Metroid come out. I'm like, okay, like this is selling like hotcakes, and I'm like, I think gaming is genuinely in this position where it's like this new genre of like ultra cinematic kind of games is like starting to like become its own genre. Like I think God of War doing the way it did is kind of a clear example of that. And you know, I think people just want games again. Which is why Metroid Prime comes out and it sells so well, and it's like, dude, it's been there the whole time. It just needed a new coat of paint and like a couple like optimizations of controls, and like now it's selling like hotcakes. And people, I want to do more research into it, but I've already seen a lot of posts from people who are like, I never played this when it came out. Like I didn't even know this was. I thought this was just a character from Smash. Like I didn't know she had her own games.
Yeah, it's this like every man's every single genre and every single type of playing all in one game kind of game that's been coming out.
It's like jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, where I'm like, it's literally every I'm not gonna say everything, but the majority of these AAA titles are they've got some sort of open world, they've got some sort of skill tree of some sort, they've got some sort of like I gotta collect resources and then manage those in order to craft and build and like progress my character kind of system, and they all are like ultra cinematic, which is I think the thing that distracts, I'll speak for myself, I think it happens to a lot of people, I'll speak for myself, distracts me the most, or at least did for a long time, was how downright beautiful a lot of these games can look.
Horizon has some of the most beautiful landscapes.
Like
Like
pun intended,
dead
like
ass.
it has some of the most beautiful horizons.
Yeah, just
Okay,
looking around,
but-
like it is a beautiful world, and the art design is like great.
But it begs the question, I'm like, am I playing a game, or am I coming to this game to like experience horizons? Because I don't know about you, but like I do know about you, I'm just being hyperbolic here, but like I don't know about you, but I go to games to play them, and I go to games to feel myself get stronger and to have fun and to enjoy the systems that are in it and to enjoy the world. And like the stories, yes, that's a huge part of it, but I think the manner in which you tell that story is very important. And when it starts feeling more like I'm watching a movie or a TV show than playing a game is when it starts to kind of lose me, because some of the best experiences I've had is when I'm playing the story, you know?
Yeah, and I think that like I feel like part of the problem with a lot of the games coming out right now is it's either like ultra cinematic with like really boring freaking gameplay. And this is where it's gonna get a little virtual, dude. Like God of War. Okay. Ragnarok in particular, because that's where it kind of like fell out the way. Because the original, I expected it to be that way. This one like didn't improve on like damn near anything with the gameplay. It doubled down on some of the stuff where I'm like, this is not fun. Like I'm pressing R1 through the entire fucking game, dude. They're like, no, you're pressing circle every once in a while too, and I'm like, all right, but it's not fun. Like in the long term, and then the story, it's like, I think the only thing the story has going for it is the actors and then the dialogue writing. Okay, because the dialogue writing is like really high tier, and then the actors they got are like really good to be able to like pull it off. But if you ask me like what's going on in the story of like God of War, like it's not that it's convoluted and I couldn't tell you. I could tell you exactly what's going on, but what I would say is like in the first game they like foreshadowed this, that, and the other thing. And then this one they decided to like subvert all of those expectations for some, like every single one of them for some reason. It just didn't make sense. We'll go into that probably another time more in depth, but I feel like games are either like that where it's like super like all the money went into the cinematics and the actors and this and that, and then the gameplay's like kind of fucking boring. Or you've got like a Horizon where it's like, okay, story's like the acting's like sure, that's fine, it works. But the game is just this cacophony of like all these different gameplay types and all these. It's like it's trying to get the adventure player. It's trying to get the shooter player. It's trying to get the person that wants to like do resource management and survival-esque kind of stuff. It's trying to get the player that wants to like. And I'm like, again, like jack of all trades, master of none. Like this game doesn't do any one thing really well. It does everything like pretty good. And that's where it lost me because I'm like, dude, like I'm going from outpost to outpost for what? And it's like, well, because there's a marker there on your map and there's stuff there. And I'm like, okay, well, what's there? And they're like, crafting resources. And I'm like, well, what am I using that for? You can upgrade your weapons. Oh, okay. Why do I need to upgrade my weapon?
But like, so you don't have to hit that button as many times.
So you don't have to hit that button as many times. And I'm like, well, what happens when I go pick up another base weapon that's not upgraded at all and it's better? Oh, well, then you can go upgrade that one. And I'm like, okay. And then what happens when I find another one after that? And then another one after that. And now you've already got this problem with the gameplay where it's like, you should have given me one weapon and then given me like specific missions to get a specific resource to upgrade that one weapon. Rather than like letting me change my weapon all the time. And that was another one too. Like I thought it was going to be just like, oh, you have your bow, you have your this, and maybe you get a couple other things, and you know you get. But like there's weapons that like there's an amount of weapons that I don't think you can have all of them equipped, because you have to choose. Like, do I want to have this little like tripwire thing? Do I want to have this like slingshot thing? Do I want to have this that? And I'm like, okay, so you've got me number one like adventuring around the world. You've got me trying to follow this story. You've got me like making political decisions in these like conversations. Okay, you've got me doing all these different things. And then you want me to also be collecting resources. And then you also want me to be like taking care of these other side missions that I get called to just on my way to a mission or quest, you know. Then you want me to like level up and upgrade my skill tree. Then you want, and I'm like, again, like it's just so much that I'm like, okay, listen, like any single one of these things are really good in a game. Okay. But the second you have me doing all of these at once, like, there's two things that come to mind. It's like, number one, I'm like, either A, it's not going to be fun because you don't know how to make a game that way. Or B, like, you're a Bethesda and that's all you've been doing. Because it's like, I'm sure people will hear what I'm saying and be like, oh, but what about Skyrim? And I'm like, that game has balance, though.
Yeah, what I would say, too, is that
like,
I mean, we don't need every game to let us decide how we want to play. I think some of the best games are the ones that are like, no, you need to play this way so you can have this experience. You know, and Horizon, you know, God of War, you know, and there's more out there for sure, you know, but like all of these open world games, like I look at like the Assassin's Creed series, you know, I look at Far Cry, it's like go in and like
every game has like stats and change
like
your weapon.
Go and like conquer this outpost, but you can sneak or you could be like aggressive. Like
approach it how you want.
Ghost of Tsushima was like that too. Okay, where it's all like, hey, you can like be stealth, or you can be like the guy that just comes in and wrecks things and stuff. And like me personally, I've gone to a point where I'm like, I'm not against it, but when this whole element of like, oh, play it how you want to play it is present, a lot of these other things tend to come along with it. You know, another one, and like I think the biggest thing is like, guys, really think about if you're deciding to make an open world game.
Yeah, it's
like I think that's the biggest thing that I can throw out there is like, if you're going to make an open world game, you should have several reasons why it is uniquely important to the game that you're trying to make. Because most open world games just come with these design hurdles that you need to like figure out. Like, how do you keep the player engaged over these long stretches of land? You know, it's like, well, you
let them go where they want to, but
Yeah.
how do you get them to go where you want them to go?
well, you have to develop an ecology, because then you're able to go like in these areas or these resources that allow you to upgrade these things and craft these things. And if you want to play a certain way, then you're going to want to get these kind of things. I'm like, that's personally, I don't think that's the most compelling kind of gameplay, because then that's basically what I'm doing in life already. like why do I have to go through all of these different lands to collect these different, like, why don't you
Not to mention,
stop giving me all these different weapons? Like, if you're
Yeah.
going to give me all these different weapons, make them all like completely different, like in the way that they play, like for completely different ends.
and
Like,
not to mention too, when you've got a game where it's like it's dealing with that whole ecology aspect of stuff, I'm like, there is plenty of survival games that do that very well.
and that's their focus.
That's the point of the game. Like, even Minecraft is like, the point of it is like, oh, you want to go to this biome, and like there you can find this, and then like these things tend to spawn over here, and like you can, and it's
Or
different.
look at Subnautica.
That's another I was just gonna mention.
Yeah.
Like, look at Ark Survival.
Yeah, like
Look-
this is different.
look at the
That's like
forest,
their,
look
that
at-
is their focus.
Yeah,
is-
like the
is
point of
that.
the game is to be like, okay, let me go over, and like that's kind of the point that like I think we're both getting at, is it's like you look at like a Horizon, and again, I'm not saying these games are bad.
They're
They're
good
not
games.
bad
They're-
games.
they're
I'm
good.
just saying I don't think they're even remotely close to how great that everyone's been praising them for. Like, I don't think they're even close.
Yeah, I would agree with
I'm
you.
like, you're getting that, and you're okay, like old fucking game, and we're gonna get to this one in a second. But you get like Resident Evil 4 original.
Yeah.
You put that up to any of these, and I'm like, listen, it may not be everyone's cup of tea, but the people that play that and like enjoy it are gonna freaking enjoy the shit out of it, far more than they'll ever enjoy a Horizon, and they'll have many moments that were far more memorable than anything a Horizon could do. And people might be like, they might disagree, but I think it's a bold statement, whatever. But for me, I'm like, it's just that like a game like Resident Evil 4 it knows what it's doing, and it does that impeccably well.
Yeah.
Horizon, I'm like, what were you guys trying to do with this? And I bet you if I ask like 4 different directors or whatever of different departments, they'll all have completely different answers. And people might be able to say like, oh, well, that's because games have gotten more complex. And I'm like, they have, but they've also gotten complex in areas where they didn't need to. Okay. Like, it feels like, it feels like what I said earlier. It's like a lot of the games now are either like super cinematic and have shit gameplay, or they've got like whatever cinematics and whatever story. Like, it passes. It's better than average. You know, it's all right. It's not doing anything groundbreaking, but it's good performances. And then the gameplay is just this cacophony of like all this different stuff. And I'm like, why didn't you just give me a weapon? Like, I don't need to be picking up different versions of this. And this, like what is this, Skyrim? What is this, like an RPG where I'm picking up swords and crap all the time? Like what are you trying to do with this? And I keep going to Horizon because it's most recent, and it's gotten like raving reviews for how amazing it is and stuff. And,
Honestly, God of War is like this too. It's
okay,
like,
God of War's like that too,
like-
with the hilts and this and that. For me, I'm like, it goes back to what I told you with
and
that
the
one.
armors.
And yeah,
like, I've seen people where they're literally like, I'm trying to get every single armor and everything. This is a side note too. It's like, along with these armors and these different weapons and upgrades, everyone's got to have some land that you have some sort of gauntlet that you have to go through. Okay, like, what level wave did I get to? And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but like God of War wasn't that. Like, God of War,
No.
like, wasn't, let me try to upgrade my materials for like my weapons and my armors in order to like get through this gauntlet. Like, the game was the gauntlet.
Yeah.
Like the story, like cool, that's great. And I don't really want to touch the story with a 10-foot pole right now because that's like a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the gameplay, God of War versus the original God of Wars, it loses me in so many areas because of exactly what you're explaining, where you're like, you find yourself just smashing R1. You're hitting R1, you're dodging a little bit. You're hitting L2 and throwing things and then recalling them. You're hitting square, you're tapping it when you're tapping it whenever you see the little icon in the bottom left corner, or at least when you feel like you can hit it again in order to get just a little more damage in so you can complete this this area, this arena of like battle. But it's not very strategic. And people might disagree with me on that, but I would challenge that disagreement because I'm like, really think about what you're pressing. I think at the end of the day, a lot of these games overwhelm, and because you're overwhelmed, you get lost in your own enjoyment of the game because you're like, there's so much being thrown at me that like
you don't even have a second to think.
You don't even have a moment to really be not be distracted to actually formulate the thought like, this isn't that fun. Like you by the time you're even like getting close to thinking about that, they're throwing another piece of the story and you're like, well, I gotta find out what happens next. And I'm like, see, this is what I'm getting at. Like, this is like a TV show. Like, we're like, and I'm talking like
TLC.
This is like Stranger Things, dude. Where it's like, I gotta find out what happens to this next person. Why do you gotta find out? Are you actually interested in the story? Yeah, I am. Why? Oh, because I think the Upside Down in this, and I like this character. Okay, why? Oh, well, because 11 this, and like, she's like the person that. Okay, and why do you feel that? It's like, at the end of the day, it's like, well, because I started it because everyone else was watching it.
And now here we are.
And now I've come this far. Like, and I feel like a lot of these games, like, nail that same part of the brain that these shows are doing, where it's like, I've got to see what happens next. And it's like, no, you don't. Like, give yourself a break away from the game, and you'll start to realize that these games aren't as enjoyable as they could be. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not trying to put them down, but what I am saying is let's be a little more critical about it. And I feel like, to kind of bring it around before we take our next break, but when a game like Metroid Prime comes back out, a game like Dead Space Remake comes back out, and you play these like 9 to 10 hour like experiences, and as you're playing them, and even after you're done with them, you're like, man, that was so good.
Let me start it again.
It's almost like the game experience transcended just the time you spent playing it.
Yes.
Okay, and like, it reminds me, I'm like, you know what? I'm not crazy. Like, these games were more fun. And games are supposed to be fun.
Games have lost themselves, I feel.
Yeah, and they're going to refine themselves,
It's just this little like weird puberty phase where it's like ultra cinematic and stuff.
And you're gonna find us back,
in just a moment.
In just a moment, So enjoy this tune.
And we're back. Wow. I hope you enjoyed that music.
Yeah,
it was written by. Check the description. It was written by whoever we put in the description.
Yeah, it was written by a person.
It was written by a person, and they made this music specifically for us.
And we
and other YouTubers too, if they'd like.
Specifically for this reason.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna get into the Chainsaw demo.
Yeah, we're gonna continue with our remake remasters / state of play return episode.
Yeah.
The grand return.
I think I need to get more specific over time with what I define as a perfect game, and with what I mean by even like doing a remake. There's two options. But I think in that process, this is part of the delineation and the clarification of it all, of what I mean. So Resident Evil 4 had a Chainsaw demo put out like a week ago, right?
Yeah, it's been about a week now.
And the actual remake's coming out in like a week now.
Yes.
At this point.
Very
and
close.
so they released that demo really soon to release. like really close to the release.
It
And
was a way to funnel pre-orders.
yeah, it was a way to funnel pre-orders, but I think that fact is also an explanation for why it was so short. Because it's literally like, if you played the original, you literally like, you know what I'm talking about. You get to the village. You use you use your pair of monoculars. You know,
your dual monoculars.
yeah. You use that. You check the village a bit. You peep it, as the youngins say these days.
I've heard this.
It's funny, but I'm technically one of them. And then you do that whole intro. Bell rings. Ganados leave.
Adventure continues,
but in the demo, that's where it ends. The bell rings and the demo's over. So it's a really, really short demo.
Yeah.
But I think it does give, just based off of what we've seen and what the devs have been saying with this one in particular, like I think it gives a pretty clear picture of what to expect. Where, as they've said, they're not removing anything. Everything is completely in the game. They're keeping it all. They're just reconfiguring certain parts to make like layout of certain areas to make it flow a little better with the new like movement mechanics and all that. And then they're also expanding certain areas because there's certain areas that they wanted to do more. If anybody knows like the development, we've looked into this quite a bit, but like if you know the development of Resident Evil 4, you'll know it didn't have necessarily a troubled development, but it did have a rather drawn out development to lead to the final product. Like it went through tons of revisions and iterations and stuff like that. And so throughout that, there's a lot of stuff that they ended up leaving on the table. And so there's some of those things that they're bringing in where they can and stuff like that. Like there's a few enemies that are like new enemies because they're like, it just made more sense for like these areas and this and that. And so it's like a remake and an expanded vision of like what was already on the table though. So it's not like they're just whipping new stuff out of their ass and just like throwing it in there. But from the little demo, the game definitely seems faster paced, like in terms of combat and stuff like that.
Yes.
It is probably like 2 to 3 times more violent and brutal than the original.
Yeah.
Like the game is freaking brutal, dude. Like some of the death animations are just like horrific and like traumatizing. As if the original wasn't already. Like at the time.
Yeah.
Like I remember being a kid and just like watching you play it, and then I'd see you like die from the chainsaw guy, and like I just couldn't fathom that they like chainsawed the head off of like the main character.
Yeah.
And I've talked to you about that, like Dead Space is like that too. But like there were certain games from back in the day that just had a certain level of like irreverence for your main character when they died.
Yep.
They're just like, you died. Like, look at that.
You're like, you messed up.
Yeah, and that's the thing that even Callisto, I think, does pretty well, albeit with like not that many animations. And I do think that the way that they're adding animations, over time, the more I've thought about it, I think the way they're adding animations is a little bit... I think it sucks for the consumer. I think it's kind of dumb, but I think it does also make sense for the company because it's their first game. They need to make back some more money to keep going. So I get it, but
I'm totally down for more Callisto.
Yeah, I do think it's. I'm excited to see if they do a sequel, but let's not get into that too much. The remake's definitely faster. It's like way more brutal, way more violent, and just the way the combat flows. And this is going to go into more in depth with like the original game and why I consider it a perfect game. In my list of perfect games, I only hold 3 games to that regard. Okay, you know them very well. Okay, yes. It's Resident Evil 4, it's Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, okay, and it's Bloodborne. Mm-hmm. And those are the only 3 games I can fathom even putting in that because of this particular factor where for me I'm like, I'm not the kind of person that goes to a game and I just don't like something and I'm like, no, that game sucks. Like that's, for me, I try to understand where they're coming from. I want to understand what the game's trying to get me to do. Like, I don't want to just shit on a game if I'm just, like, not playing it right. You know? Like I had a big experience with that with Breath of the Wild. I remember where I was like getting frustrated at the traversing, and you remember this. I was getting really pissed off with the traversing and stuff like that, and then you kind of gave me some tips with like the climbing and rain, like 1, 2, 3, then jump and this and that. And then I remember the big one. It was quite the mind boggler, and I never would have even fathomed this. But you're like, stop going from point A to point B, like follow the roads. You're like, the roads are there for a reason, because I was like not following roads, and I can't remember exactly what's happening. I'd need to play it again and try that to like see what's happening. But
you're complaining about how difficult and how annoying and tedious it was to have to climb all these mountains to get to where you needed to get.
Yeah, it was yeah, that's what it was. You're like, you don't have to climb all these mountains,
take
dude.
the road,
just
dude.
take the road, it's faster.
Yeah.
That's
like you go.
Yeah, dude, I remember that because I would like run up to I would just try to go to like straight line it to like my location, my destination or whatever, and then I have to climb like 3 mountains just to get there, and you're like, dude,
like, or you could follow the path
and go around it,
around and in between.
I'm like, see, there's another fucking mountain I have to climb, like. But needless to say, like, I've been like this since even before that, but that was one of the most recent cases where I was like, okay, like I gotta really like think about what the game is trying to tell me to do, like what the game wants me to do. And that's how I approach games. And so throughout that, like playing a lot of different games, there's only those 3 games that I'm like, okay, with what you're trying to get me to do and the way it works and the mechanics and all of this stuff, and then the rhythm of the gameplay that actually you end up falling into.
Yes.
And then just the gameplay loop and the pacing, like all of that stuff, like, and this is what makes it perfect, is through all of that analyzing and through it, going through the whole ringer, like, there's not a thing I would change.
Yeah.
And those are the only 3 games that I could put there, because like a Dead Space, like that's another game that came really close to that, the original. But I'm like, dude, I would change like what do you call it? Like the Leviathan fight, I'd change that.
The weapon balancing.
I'd change.
Uniqueness.
Yeah, that I'd change. And for me, I'm like, for those reasons, I can't give it a perfect. I can't say it's a 10. Me personally. Like I just can't. Like there's things I would change.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm just one guy. So you take that with what you will. But for me, I'm like, that's what I tend to like go through when I'm like thinking of what I consider a perfect game. And so with Resident Evil 4, to get back on topic, that's one of those games that I think is a perfect game, because I think, and this is a big factor too, is for me, I'm like a thing, I think a small detail that could even like ruin a game from being perfect, which is also a reason why I don't think BioShock is technically a perfect game. Some people are probably going to really disagree with this, but for me, I'm like, if I want to play it on a harder difficulty, you should have thought of that, rather than just making everything have more health. And when I play like a Resident Evil 4 on the hardest difficulty, like the professional or whatever, like the pacing and the loop is there, and they create genuine difficulty where the enemies are a little more aggressive. In some rooms, there's more enemies in there. And when you're looking for like ammo scarcity and like stuff like that is way higher, so it's like
I would agree with you on that. Because
that's like real difficulty.
Because it's, if you're saying it's a perfect game, you're talking about the product as a whole. You're talking
I'm talking about all of it.
All of its constituent parts added up into one body of work. And if you're including another difficulty in that, then that's part of the game. And so if you're playing it that way and that doesn't work out the way that the other one did, then I would agree with you. By the way, I think BioShock is a 9 out of 10.
It's so close.
It is quite possibly even a 9.5 out of 10. But the difficulty, the reason I say a 9 is because of the difficulty, and because like I think personally that last boss, no spoilers, and I'm not going to get into the details of it. Granted,
you mean the one where the guy does the thing and
then the whole thing explodes. But granted, you should have played BioShock by now if you haven't. But I think that the ending, I think that the difficulty, and then I also think that the story options that you get based off of some of the decisions you can make with the little sisters, I think it almost feels very rushed, like at the end. Like, so that's why I would give it a 9 out of 10.
I can see that.
Yeah, but it is such a good game. But anyway, not to get off topic. Yes. Resident Evil 4.
So Resident Evil 4, you play it on that difficulty, it's great. You know, it works. It's real difficulty. When you go to like a BioShock and put on harder difficulty, it's just like you don't have enough ammo and now everything takes 1,000,000 shots to kill. And so you're not like, there's not much skill-wise you can do to, like, succeed.
Yeah.
It's more a matter of, like, okay, let me manage my resources more. And if people want to say that that's real difficulty, that's fine. The next thing I'll say is it's not fun. It's not. You think it's fun sitting there trying to just like scam the freaking hack all the machines so you can buy more ammo, so you can load more bullets into a Big Daddy or even just a splicer just so you can kind of get like it's annoying as fuck, dude. Okay, it's annoying as shit. Okay, you're always running out of plasmid, like the Eve or whatever, because you're trying to do all these different like combos with that, like the electricity and the wrench. And it just doesn't work out. Like it doesn't work out right. Like BioShock Infinite is like really good with that. Because BioShock Infinite, it's like what I'm saying, where it's like there's more enemies, they're more accurate. When they're shooting at you, they're more accurate, they're more aggressive. But like it doesn't take me more to kill them. They can kill me a lot easier though. I think is like the more foundational thing I'm getting at. And it's like Resident Evil 4 does that so well. And it doesn't lose anything in the rhythm of the game. And the things you end up pulling off to like get through it is much more of a finesse than it is a like breaking of the game. Of me having to pull this like stupid like okay, to get through the game you need to get them stuck on that corner and this. It's not stuff like that. Like what I end up doing is it's like okay, let me pop them in the leg and then knife them because the knife is like really good, and then you just end up timing that. Where you're like, let me just knife them a few times and back off a little bit and shoot them, then knife them.
I really like what they were doing with the knife in this new one.
Yes, and that's what I'm getting to. Okay. So the point I'm getting at leading into this remake and the demo is that game I hold to a really high regard for like a lot of design choices they made that equate to the sum of its parts being this like very refined experience in terms of just the experience as a whole, but also just the moment-to-moment gameplay. It's got a very specific rhythm, and down to even the sound design for like the popping of the heads and the Ganados like melting on the floor, and then when you pick up ammo from them, it's like all of that stuff is like so. Every little part of it is so specific to like the experience you have. And again, I don't know if a lot of these things were intentional or they just went with the best of some of them and ended up striking oil. But like it equates to that. You know, the sum of its parts equates to what I'm saying right now. And so coming to this remake, I'm like, okay, I was a little concerned about the rhythm of the combat in particular. I wasn't really concerned about anything else, honestly, because I'm like, the remakes they've been doing have been like freaking fantastic from what I've seen just from from what I've seen from just the trailers and stuff. Like it, only thing I was concerned of before we ever saw a trailer was I knew they were gonna do 4, and I'm like, I don't want them to like remove parts of the game.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be like, but like Salazar's a little zany, let's not do that. And so seeing that all of it was there, I wasn't really concerned, but I just wanted to see how the combat felt, and from the demo, it's very different.
Yeah, very different.
Very different. But I think that's to its benefit, because I realized while playing that, I'm like, this what I'm doing here is a lot more fast-paced. It's a lot more frantic. Like, you're kind of like, just in that opening, I felt myself like literally like jutting the camera around because I'm like trying to look behind me while, like, for instance, that first building you can go to get the shotgun in that village, I went in there, and then the guy starts sawing down the door, and I've got a little time, but I go up. I already know where everything's at because things are still in the same locations, which was nice.
Yeah.
And I get all this stuff. I get the grenade, this and that, and then Ganados are climbing in through the window, so I'm trying to keep them out. Then I hear the door open, and I'm like, it felt very frantic. Like, I was literally trying to, like, defend this home. Which is a feeling that you still feel in the original, but the means in which you're getting to that feeling being evoked, it's pretty different.
Yeah.
And it felt good, and it was different, it was new, and I liked that a lot because I realized while playing that, I'm like, I think for them to try to encapsulate the original pacing and rhythm and then update it to be like a twin stick shooter and stuff would have been like trying to like, I can't think of a good analogy, but it's like, it's almost like trying to rediscover like nuclear fission. Where it's like, dude, you guys already discovered that. Like, you think you're gonna rediscover that again? Like,
yeah, you gotta
in
assess
a new
like
way.
What works already, and it seems like they did. Where they went like, okay, so we know that the environment works. We know that these enemies are scary. We know that these weapons are great, and we know that the knife is really important. So like, what can we do to improve on this? Or like, well, first off, let's add more Ganados. because if it's going to be faster and we
You're
want
gonna
to
get through them quicker.
you're going to be going through them quicker, then let's add some new abilities and restrictions on the knife. Because with the knife now you can parry things. You can, like, the way that the mechanics of the knife even work, it's easier for you to even just simply swipe.
Yep.
You know? But you can also like do finishing moves like stabbing and all of that.
Yeah, if you get them on the floor, you can like instead of having to swipe at them.
But those do damage to your knife, and then you'd have to find a new knife.
Yeah.
Which I personally like. I think that's great. Like, I think that's a good move. I think that there's a lot of tension that's going to come from that, and the movement options just for the way he works. It plays in parity with all of the other things that the Ganados can do. Like, the Ganados are doing things like grabbing you and holding you so another Ganado can like wreck you.
Yeah.
You have to like break free. Like the Chainsaw Man, like I can't remember if he did this in the original, like at least not like fresh in my memory, but he'll like slice down his own Ganados to like get to you.
Yeah.
Like if there's other people in front of him, like he'll slice them down to get to you.
Cool detail too, and I can't remember if I don't think this was in the original either. But if there's a Ganado all the way in the back of the group about to throw something, he'll literally in Spanish call it like, "I'm throwing this," and then they'll all duck.
There's
and
so
like,
much more detail, and like
the facial animations on some of them are like
they're pretty
really detailed.
They're very terrifying, you know, and they were in the original as well. But
it's like new fidelity.
In this one, it's like a new level of fidelity. And granted, again, it's a very short demo, but to the point that we were making earlier with remakes, like it seems like they are going whole hog with the remake. They're going like, we're respecting and showing reverence for it, but we're also going to add a lot of new stuff and change a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's still very distinctly Resident Evil 4, but it feels like a fresh experience, and it feels, just from playing that demo, we could be wrong on this, I could be wrong on this, but it feels like it's going to be one of those things where I'm pleased to say, oh yeah, play the remake, like play the new one, also play the original though.
Yeah,
like they're
very different.
They're very different. They're
they both the same thing,
but it's so worth playing. Like,
yeah, again, because I'm realizing what we're talking about. I'm like, that's kind of one of the big things I noticed just from that, and I'm excited to see how that pans out throughout the game. But I'm like, the emotions I felt going through that were exactly the same as like the original, but the means in which the game got me to feel that was like so different. And it's a very unique experience, because I don't think any remakes really done that to me. It's either been like, oh, I think the original's better, I don't like that they changed this, or like a Dead Space where I'm like, just play that one.
Yeah.
But this one's like, it's like what you said, but it's also because of what I'm saying here too. I realize it's like, I don't think the old one's gonna get too old.
No, that one's not.
You know, and like some people may not like it because it's tank mechanics, but for me, I'm like, that's one of those games that I hold up where I'm like, but look at it, like tank mechanics work. Okay, because if you play Resident Evil 4 the original and don't account for how much of the pacing of the game is because of the tank mechanics too, I think you're missing a big part of the point of why the game feels the way it does.
Also, and to cap it before we move on to our last topic, they got rid of the laser, and the laser's still in the original, so you guys should all play it.
Yes,
yeah,
the laser's tight, dude.
There's laser sights in the original.
I was a little sad that was gone once you pointed it out.
But I have a feeling they might add like an upgrade or something for these weapons where you can get it.
Yeah, I could see
like
that.
a laser sight.
I hope it gets rid of your reticle.
Now for our last
and final
topic before we say goodbye for this week, we're going to talk about a little game called Hogwarts Legacy.
A little game.
And we're just going to give our quick takes on it, our experiences. I'll kind of lead the charge with this one. I'll start off by saying I love Harry Potter. I think that the series, speak specifically to the property of Harry Potter. Okay, I like it. Okay, I actually quite love it. It's part of my childhood. I think the whole wizarding world is great. Albeit I'm a lowly little muggle saying this, but I think that Harry Potter and Dumbledore and Snape and, you know, Sirius Black and all, I think they're just the tops. I think it's just
the story is cool.
It's a fun.
It's great.
It's fun. Okay. Now that being said, the video game, I personally, I'm loving it. I'm almost at the end of it. I'm like on the last little bit of it, but
We've talked about it. He already knows. Like,
yeah, it is a blast.
It's not a crazy complex story either.
And I think that in a few sentences, it's the best Harry Potter game that's come out, or Harry Potter Wizarding World game that's come out, because Harry Potter's not in this. And I think that it got a lot of things right, primarily and namely the combat and just the whole world itself. When you go to Hogsmeade, you go to Hogwarts and all of that, it feels like the way it's described in the books, the way that you experience it in the movies, and you get to like go through it. Combat is a blast. Personally, I think it's a lot of fun. I like coming up with combos, and you start feeling very powerful as you go further through the game. Critiques, I would say that the world, the map, it's huge. And I don't think there's a lot of reason for it to be. It's cool flying on my broom, and going across the areas, but it's a little, I get why they do it, but it starts to, and it definitely does suffer from the same thing that we were talking about earlier with these open world games, where it's like, why does it got to be so big? It's just a lot of like kind of like vapid things to do, But that being said, I will say for myself personally, a lot of those things, my enjoyment of them are definitely increased because of my aforementioned love for the whole series. So, discovering a little Merlin trial, or, flying through some balloons on my broom, or what have you, is a lot more enjoyable to me than it would be like that same similar type of to do on a big map like this in any other game. And it's literally just because I love Harry Potter. Like that's the only reason why. But my critique still stands with those things. But like the base story, it's fun. It's intriguing. The story's cool. I like outfitting my character. I love the customization options. I think that's cool. You make your.
They could have gone a little further with it, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. But like it's fun. I like the fact that there's a broom. Like the first time you get on the broom, for me, like that was like a great moment. Like I really love that. Wish that there's some more things we could do on the broom, as we've discussed, before, like you and I. But yeah, I mean, I think that game's like a solid 8. Like I think that your enjoyment of that game is really going to be proportional in a lot of ways to how much you love Harry Potter. But as a base game, like the parts that are in there, I think that even the things that it's doing with the open world and the kind of game types, like side quests and activities, is a little better than a lot of other things that are out there, just on its core too. So that's kind of where I stand with it. Past that, I don't really have much more to say about the game. It's Hogwarts Legacy,
Yeah, I think I give it probably like an 8 also. If I removed my enjoyment of just Harry Potter and the wizarding worlds and all that,
7.
I give it probably like a 7.
Yeah, I would land there too.
Maybe 7.5, but that's already pushing it, I think. Because for what you do, like the beast taming, I think a good example is like the beast taming map was. If the map was smaller, you wouldn't run into the same fucking beast. Like every beast like pen or nest or whatever you go to, and I like. Yeah. It would have been cooler if they had the same amount of beasts, a smaller map, and just one outcode for each beast type. I think that would have been a little bit better, And then maybe build a little mission around like those like the unicorn and stuff, like, because the unicorn, I just found the unicorn, and then I captured it. Like, and then Weasley talks to me later, and she's like, "Wow, you got that?" I'm like, "Wow." No one catches those, and I'm like,
really?
Cool. Like, there's certain things that were just like kind of unceremonious that I thought would be like a little mission,
yeah,
and a little story.
Yeah.
But I think part of that's too because like the map is too big. It does not need to be that big. I'm sure there might be like lore behind this. I haven't really read the books or anything. But I wish I could just fly around in freaking Hogsmeade. Like, it's just kind of annoying having to run out like a certain distance away from Hogsmeade to like.
I almost feel like that's more of like a.
It's probably more a collision with buildings and shit like that than anything, but it's still kind of annoying.
You gotta like run out of like the little area.
Yeah, it's just. But yeah, I think the broom, like, it could have used, like, the time trials kind of push it, where I'm like the last time trial in particular, where I was like, okay, like, I missed some of those little like
Rings.
the little, not the rings, but the little like boost balls and stuff like that, and
Yep.
it was having me navigate a rather specific pathing, and for me, I'm like, I would have liked to see more things that push that, that would have been cool, but nothing really pushed the broom too much. The broom also felt kind of slow at times. But I think that's all.
You gotta get close to the ground so you maintain your.
Well, I was doing that, and I think a part of it is just because of how big the map is.
It's like loading.
Yeah, it's just really big. I would have liked to see that, and then I was mentioning this to you like a little bit earlier before we started recording. But for me, I'm like, it would have been cool if they had a morality meter.
Oh yeah, that would have been
Because
so
they kind of advertise where it's like, be a good wizard or a bad wizard, and like I was trying to be a bad wizard as bad as I could, but there wasn't like really dialogue options to be like a bad wizard. You're either just like an asshole or you're a nice guy. And there's certain characters where I'm like, I want it to be like a little slime ball to them, like not just a douchebag, but like a little slimy,
something between.
something a little bit skeevy, a little bit more complex,
more nefarious.
Yeah,
Not so evil.
and there wasn't really options for that, which I get that, but there also wasn't any morality meter. And I'm not saying you need to have a morality meter for this, but for me, I'm like, there wasn't really a morality meter to differentiate if it was good or bad. Again, this is more a comment on just because they kind of advertised it, where it's like you can be a good wizard or a bad wizard.
Yeah.
Like, you can learn cursed spells. And, like, I learned all the cursed spells. And my guy was kind of bad, so it kind of made sense. But, like, you were doing kind of more of, like, a good guy.
Yeah, I still learned the curse spells.
You still learned the cursed spells, and it didn't,
And
like...
I still told people when I did them favors that I wanted money for it, because I'd get money for it. They'd
Yeah.
be like, that makes sense. Here you go. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
and-
perfect.
It's just stuff like that where I'm like, it felt kind of like... It just felt, like, inconsequential.
But your score is, you said an 8. So we're both at an 8. Not that we're rating
Realistically, we're at a 7.
but yeah, that's
Like,
with
I think
it gets a little boost.
It gets a little boost because I do like Harry Potter, and like when I'm doing Revelio and getting these little markers for my stuff, like I'm reading it all, and I like the lore and all that. But yeah, I think it's a good game.
I'd say if you like Harry Potter,
Map's too big, combat's cool. Could have used morality stuff to actually like go in depth with that. Like I would have liked to like make it more like Fable with that. Honestly, I'm in Hogsmeade. I kill someone or something. Some guards come after me.
Yeah.
But
if you like Harry Potter, play it.
yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. But yeah, we figured we'd touch on that since we've been playing it.
Yeah, it's rather quick. There's not much to that game. So,
well, this concludes our return, and we thank you for sitting this long with us. We hope to see you again next week, and don't forget we're streaming on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 to 1 p.m. at twitch.tv/swirmedia. And check out our YouTube channel. We got some highlights and some clip shows going up, so it's good stuff, good times.
bye.
Have a good one.